Hello, faithful listeners. My name is Clay Thompson, and I'll be your guide and narrator in the fiction room. Today's prompt comes from username Seraphim9120. You're a paramedic. In fact, an immortal paramedic. Since you first treated a wounded soldier on the fields of the 30 Years' War, you didn't age and followed the development of emergency medical service. Your coworkers are astonished by your knowledge, but sometimes you slip into old habits. As always, I hope you'll enjoy listening to these stories as much as I enjoy reading them. But without further ado, let us begin with our first story, written by a user whose name was taken off the site. Hacksaw, now! The winter night air was cold, and the air was filled with police radio chatter and the drone of a helicopter overhead. My patient laid in the street, bleeding from a bullet wound in his thigh, just moments before he had been barely conscious. Now, eyes wide, he gave me a terrified look as if to say, "Please, not the hacksaw!" Oops. It was my 5th call since midnight, and it was only 3 a.m. Friday nights in Baltimore are always sleepless ones for the ambulance crews. I had dozed off a bit on my way to this call, and I may have forgotten which century it was when we got on scene. My driver cleared his throat awkwardly and stood up a little taller. "I think you mean tourniquet, Chris." He put his hand on the patient's shoulder. "A little bit of ambulance humor, you're going to be all right." "Sit down, fellas." A heavy-set man sat behind a desk. He ran his hand through what remained of his thin hair and rolled up the sleeves of his white button-down shirt. We sat, and he looked at us for over a minute. "Fellas, this is the 9th complaint this year. I'm gonna be straight with you. You two are the best dang medic crew in this city. Heck, you won a Valor Award last year. But why, in heaven's name, can't you watch what you say on calls?" Pete and I exchanged glances. "Chief," he said, "we were just running low on sleep." "Oh, no," Chief cut in, flipping through a massive folder of loose papers. "2 months ago you were in the ER and recommended the charge nurse give the patient a handle of whiskey to ease the pain." "I'm sure it would have done the trick," I started. "You're a paramedic! You carry morphine! What about in June, when you had a patient with a minor cough and chest pain? You told her most folks don't last long with the consumption." "The consumption?" "Chief, what I meant was..." "It's called tuberculosis, and they can treat it easily. What year do you think this is, anyway?" I looked down, trying to comply with the Chief's demands and subdue his temper. 1989, sir." Chief's head thumped down onto the table into his arms. "Chris, it's 2019. I looked over at Pete. He was somewhere between amused and terrified. Chief looked up, face red, eyes pleading. "Just watch what you say out there. Please, for the love of God." Pete and I nodded, and we scurried up as quickly as we could. The bells rang, and the overhead radio came on. "Medic call, Federal Hill Park, 1 injured from assault." I couldn't even stop him before Pete exclaimed, "The Brits are at Fed Hill! Get in the ambulance and get out of here!" The sense of humor in this kind of reminds me of that show Psych, where the guy doesn't take anything seriously because he basically knows everything, so I like that little touch. And now let's move on to our second story, written by Potato with a Knife. They kill each other as they always have. In mass. And per usual, no matter how they pretty up the motivations with lofty goals and eloquent speeches, they kill each other for the same reasons. Heck, they've been doing it for as long as I have been alive. Before then even. You could say human history is written by a bloody pen, to the surprise of no one. Sure, I saw it then. I see it now. What weighs heavy is the knowledge of its uselessness and repetitiveness. Humans have this classical conditioning to kill each other in wholesale extravagance, and the more their methods change, the more horrifying the results. So I stay on the fringes, helping the lost and forgotten, those without access to care, those without access to food or shelter. I do what I can now to make up for what I did so long ago. Newfound immortality can sometimes make you lose sight of consequences. I push the thought aside, returning to work. The work. The endless, grinding, horrifying work. Raise the leg, I command. The nurse does so. Hopefully this will stop the bleeding. The hole, nice and small and round, pulses out blood at regular intervals, making that weird watery texture that clings to the leg hairs. The man who had been unlucky to get caught in Sniper Alley moans softer now, though that may be the morphine kicking in. Sometimes you get those random flashes from the past, looking at these infected wounds. This'll turn and fester into something dangerous if I don't address it here and now. We need maggots, I say, remembering examining those infected wounds beneath boiled leather and chainmail, but catch myself. That's the problem with being this old. Memories enjoy whisking me to places where the dead still speak. The woman volunteering as a nurse doesn't respond, only blinks at me. Always tired. Always afraid. When they're tired, you can usually say whatever you want to them. But you can't talk in a medical scenario like this. You need to command. Force the bystanders to participate. This isn't a place for professionals. But this is neither the time nor place where they can flourish. I can take a bullet or two and be fine. The rest? Not so much. But still, I try to maintain a sense of authority whenever I can. It helps, at least. Do this now! Get me this amount of such and such, and I needed it 5 minutes ago. I may have all the time in the world, but they don't.
Mr. Richardson?
A small voice, heavily accented, timidly wafts over the moans and groans of dying men and women. No, not timid. Broken. Someone is pulling me away, though I'm still focused on this wound. It needs cleaning, it needs stifling, it needs proper attention, real help, real professional care that can't be cobbled together by volunteers in camps too close to the ever-present fighting. Heal. As best as you can. Do you remember the ridiculous methods? The crushed emeralds, and the balancing of humors, and all that ridiculous nonsense that probably killed more than it could possibly save. Keep them alive. Keep the blood inside. It's delicious, though. The blood, sweet and hot. Take a taste, be subtle, wipe your hands across your mouth, and let it trickle down your tongue. No! I don't need blood anymore. I quit it. I don't need it. I'm not that kind of thing anymore. Doctors, especially in places of greatest need, always carry that same resigned posture, that broken and barely lucid look on their face. Never enough sleep, never enough bandages, never enough help, never enough time, always fighting the clock.
I'll take over,
she says. She shouldn't have to. But what can you do? Homemade drones managed to drop a few live grenades on some volunteer medics a week before, and we can barely manage the staff as it is. The boom of artillery can be heard, with a few patients jumping at the sound. In the next instant, they relax. It's outgoing, not incoming. Not that the shells care. Sinner or saint, they blow us all to smithereens. Fine. I manage, wiping my hands clean. Save the towel. Lick it later. No! Moving between the makeshift tents, I walk through streets cluttered with rubble and debris. The clatter of small arms fire sounds even further away, its echo strengthened by the distant walls of the valley. I'm being led to a tent. And how many tents have I entered? war tents all over the world. In almost every war and conflict, saving who I can, preventing infections before the humans truly understood what was going on. Not bad for a peasant boy from Bohemia. In a tent, a woman with raven black hair sits at a desk, flanked on either side by burly men with expensive-looking rifles. Fancy and new. Not too much dust, clean and full magazines. No grime in the barrel. No broken equipment. When these men pull the trigger, it fires. And certainly not locals. Private military personnel, I'd say. Though not the government kind. Their kind. The hunter's kind. Taking a seat, we exchange pleasantries. I'm vaguely aware of them, but do not know their true intentions. They've been observing, rather than participating in the civil conflict. The woman doesn't appear to waste any time. She speaks with the same kind of certainty that always comes from commanding the respect in the room. A no-kidding kind of lady. My kind of lady.
Mr. Richardson, we've taken great pains to find you. We are aware of your condition and choose to offer you sanctuary in exchange for your rather unique skill set.
It's matter of fact and straight to the point. No preamble, no dramatic rants about the history of vampires and humans, of the secretive, idiotic conflict between pretentious men and women desperate to kill as many of these night crawlers as they can. They always talk to you like this when they want something from you. Same as Lincoln, same as Louis, same as Gustav. They always ask for your very special expertise, and it's never about humans. Always about my own kind. The monsters that stalk the shadows and drain the blood of virgins. If you believe the church. Which I don't, but still. Those days have long passed. I'm not easy to find, I say, the dust clogging my throat.
You've spent so long hiding, haven't you? Fighting the urges. A consequence of being a good Samaritan. You saved a soldier, though you thought he came from the Lord's castle. So long ago, giving him water, shelter, and care, hiding him from your parents in the barn, a long-forgotten relic of ancient time. Did he know, then, he was going to come back and bite you while you slept? Turn you into an abomination like him? He even thought he was doing you a favor. In exchange for saving his life, he saves yours. How long had that man been running from the church's hunters? How long had he spent bleeding black blood into blindingly white snow? Fangs drawn, veins coursing. He knelt over you at night, too terrified to scream, whispering dark words and spells in a language you could only pray to not understand. I think you know what I'm going to ask you, Mr. Richardson. It'll require taking you somewhere far from here,
she says. Pull me out of a war zone? There's only one reason for a pleasant set of terms, rather than the usual die foul demon spawn.
In exchange, we offer a sense of immunity.
From your kind?
From our kind.
She speaks without really considering what I may have to say on the subject. Human, through and through, arrogant to the last. By her posture, a hunter, a killer of my own kind. Though they'll never beat the classic killers, the ones who ride moonbeams and sail through the night, slipping into rooms and draining men and women dry. That must be some kind of saying in her business, though. Humans can do their best, true. But no one can kill a vampire like another vampire, and usually over a pint of blood.
Work for us.
Silence. Only the sound of distant warfare. No more running? A peaceful existence? Sounds too good to be true. She's been speaking, but I haven't been listening. The words roll lazily, bouncing through a dry desert air. Somewhere, yelling. Violence. The killing. It grates. The killing, it takes its toll. No matter how long you help, they find a new excuse. The same reasons, the same excuses. Dedicate hundreds of years to it, but it's never enough. Never enough lives saved. Maybe I am tired. Maybe I've been doing this for far too long. I'm just so tired. Tired of the death. Tired of the sheer horror that masks me from those who would see me dead. Tired of being alone. Maybe if I just bite my pride and do the job, they'll leave me alone. No more running. No more hiding. Some kind of sense of normalcy? A golden key to a life I've never had? I cut her off before she can work on her false attempts at convincing. She clearly doesn't care about what she's saying. How rare must this be? The humans who dedicate their lives to ending our kind's staying on this earth with false platitudes and a bargain? I'll do it, I hear myself saying. It's not me, someone else. Someone who doesn't care about the details or what they entail. Someone who doesn't care about the cost or the measure, only the reward. Peace and freedom. She smiles at me, motioning for me to follow the men beside her. Double-cross me and they'll regret it. Still, the itch. Just one last drink. Just one more drop of blood. No. You say no, but I follow. Addiction loves you, even if you hate me. I'm not one of them. Not one of the monsters that hunt and kill with no sense of remorse. Humanity's light long burned out. Last of my bloodline. Last of my family. Does it matter? Healing to atone for my sins? I don't hurt people. Not anymore. Now, this story hits pretty heavy because it's a subject of something supernatural made into a burden for this guy, and how he struggles to live with it every single day, even though he's trying to do good to make up for the bad things in his past that ended up with him hurting people. So, very nicely done, Potato with a Knife. Very nice. And now, dear listeners, we must unfortunately bid you farewell once again. Thank you all for tuning into the Fiction Room. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please consider leaving a like, a comment, and subscribing to the channel. It really would help. But for now, wherever you are in the world, be safe, be well, and we'll see you all next time.